Hi, everybody. My name is 𝘵𝘪𝘦𝘴𝘴, and I'm a recent graduate of Ohio University. I majored with a bachelor's degree in journalism and a specialization in women, gender, sexuality studies. I'll also be heading back to OU in the fall for my graduate degree in journalism as well. I'm a native of Athens, Ohio, which is where Ohio University is, for those of you not familiar with the school. And it really has inspired my idea of journalism, the importance of local journalism, and the importance of reporting on small towns, which is a little bit about what you'll hear in my talk today. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. And I'd love to tell you a little bit more about parachute journalism. In December of 2019, Joe Burrow, former quarterback for Louisiana State University, was awarded the Heisman Trophy. This is not news I would normally pay attention to. I do not even have a passing interest in college football, and prior to last year, could not even tell you what the Heisman was. But Joe Burrow is something of a hero to my hometown of Athens, Ohio. Once upon a time, I had watched Joe play football in an ill-fitting green and gold uniform on the field of the high school we both attended. But now, overnight, Joe went from a guy I had once sat behind in my junior year chemistry class to a national talking point. The entire world seemed to not only be discussing Joe's talent, but his Heisman acceptance speech, in which he mentioned Athens and the crippling poverty and food insecurity that plagues the region. Soon, national journalists came to Athens, aiming to paint a picture of the impoverished place Joe had spoken about. In an article published in the New York Times this January, sports reporter Billy Witz focused on Athens High School and the trailer park that surrounded the school, and did not shy away from describing the ongoing cycle of poverty and drug addiction in the community. Reading that article, and many just like it, I remember feeling a chill. Every weekday for 4 years, I sat in that high school, and I stared out the windows and looked upon the trailer homes outside, and let my mind wander with all the usual daydreams of a teenage girl. If people liked me, if I passed my driver's license test, if I could get out of volunteering at the soup kitchen my dad ran that coming weekend. To me, Athens High School was a monument to my formative years. But while Witz is a talented reporter, he's also a graduate of Tulane University and a Harlem-based journalist who had not previously stepped foot on the Athens High School campus. I'm not so naive to believe I could have written a better story, but it makes me wonder. When a national newsworthy story came to my backyard, what if someone who had their heart connected to the community as much as I did was there to answer the call, instead of someone who lived and was educated in a world that felt light years away? What happened to my hometown, and many other small towns just like it when they become the backdrop for notable stories, is called parachute journalism. This refers to journalists from the largest metropolises in the country suddenly arriving in small-town USA when a noteworthy story occurs, and then leaving as soon as interest in the story wanes. It is not an uncommon practice, but often problems can occur when disconnected reporters are the ones trusted with reporting the tales of Middle America. The newspaper industry of yesteryear inherently tied newspapers to location. A newspaper had to be published in the community it reported on, was funded by ads from local businesses. Typically, its reporters lived in the same community in which they worked, and readers had to read the paper to be connected with their community. But now, most everyday people turn to national journalism for day-to-day news. Currently, the most powerful journalists in the United States are employed by publications like CNN, The Washington Post, and The New York Times. These are newsrooms based inside sprawling urban centers, physical and metaphorical miles away from Middle America. There are currently over 1,000 daily papers still circulating in the United States, even though this number has dropped by the thousands in the last 15 years, and many of the reporters who work there make under the median national salary. Because these publications already have problems of their own and may be struggling to stay open, when big stories come around, these papers may not have the time or resources to cover the story to any great capacity. Instead, the brunt of the coverage will go to the large, trusted publications who have not worked and existed within the community at all. When national newsrooms have the money to pay journalists to travel across the country on short notice, and the resources to deliver breaking stories on a massive scale, urban journalists are not going to have the same local expertise a community journalist will have in the same situation. A national journalist can only see a community on the surface, but a community journalist will have the knowledge of prior events, connections to community voices, and a personal investment in a breaking story. But without this context, national journalists may quickly fall into hollow stereotypes in order to flesh out their stories on communities they are unfamiliar with. In the last several years, some of the most problematic parachute journalism has come in the wake of the 2016 election, in the midst of an ongoing opioid epidemic, and also after the rise in Black Lives Matter protests. After their communities were overtaken by reporters and gawkers from all over the country, cities from Ferguson, Missouri to Huntington, West Virginia spoke up about the negative impact that out-of-touch journalists brought to their already wounded communities. In all of these cases, it seemed that most urban, upper-class, and predominantly white journalists were unequipped to report on working-class populations disillusioned with modern politics, the realities of police violence in Black neighborhoods, or the cycle of poverty and lack of healthcare that often led to crippling addiction. Instead, they brought surface-level narratives and unwanted attention to painful topics that deserved more delicate coverage. But this does not have to be the reality of modern-day journalism. Currently, there's little hope that in the near future, the funding and power of local journalism in middle America will match that of enormous national newsrooms centered in the urban centers of the country. But there are a few things that can bolster the power of smaller journalists and also increase the knowledge of national journalists. As consumers of news, we should be giving small publications the resources and support to thrive. This is a grassroots effort and requires time, patience, and cooperation. Reader subscriptions, donations, and support are vital to keep these newsrooms going. Local businesses were also once the lifeblood of local journalism, and they have the ability to fill this role again by providing donations or recurring advertisements. But this does not have to stop there. There should be funding available elsewhere for local publications, especially through government-provided stimulus programs and emergency funds. This support could ensure that small publications can keep the community informed without having to draw funds from people that are often in need themselves. There also needs to be a greater effort to diversify where journalists come from. Large newsrooms in New York and Los Angeles should not only hire writers from top schools and wealthy backgrounds, they should be hiring journalists from low-income households who went to crumbling public schools, who have struggled to receive healthcare. All these experiences continue to be reported on, but they are rarely told from the perspective of someone who went through these realities on a personal level. Hiring journalists with diverse real-world experiences opens up the possibility for more nuanced and honest reporting. Diversifying newsrooms also starts where journalists are educated. Currently, some of the top journalism schools in the country are Northwestern University, Syracuse University, Emerson College, and New York University. These are acclaimed schools, but they also have an average tuition of $71,500 a year and are nestled in large cities and wealthy suburbs. But expensive education does not have to be a prerequisite for a successful journalism career. In Ohio alone, there's my alma mater, Ohio University, which has a renowned journalism school and an average tuition of $22,000 a year. Central State University, an HBCU with a thriving student radio station and a tuition of $14,000 a year. And Youngstown State University, which houses award-winning student journalism at $11,000 a year. Nurturing, promoting, and respecting these small and more affordable journalism schools creates opportunities for a new generation of journalists without hindering their potential and economic barriers. But after these journalists are educated, it is not guaranteed that they will go to work at small publications in underserved communities. To repair this, there needs to be greater emphasis in journalism education on the importance of jobs in local journalism and guidance on ways to apply for these smaller positions. Programs like Report for America are already helping to solve this problem by bringing young reporters to areas in need. And communities can continue to draw on young professionals by offering fair pay to their reporters and the opportunity to connect with other people in the industry. These might be slow changes, but they are necessities to ensure that the next generation of journalists arrive in cities that need their skills the most. But as we encourage more local reporting, it should be noted that turning stories over entirely to local journalists may produce some negative side effects as well. Most notably, a hyper-local lens can result in bias from people that are close to a story, and they may not have the viewpoint to contextualize their community for a national or even international audience. For this reason, community journalists and national journalists should start to collaborate on large stories rather than isolating themselves. This way, they can pool the best of their experience, skills, and resources to ensure more accurate reporting. But most of all, as reporters, we need to understand that every community is unique, and so is every story. When reporters come to communities that are not their own, they need to stick with the most basic journalistic ethics and ensure that they are not doing more harm than good. There needs to be a greater insistence on conducting thorough research into small communities and speaking with local reporters when researching big stories. Reporters of all backgrounds need to be aware of stereotypes they may be using when researching, writing, and interviewing. They should not only repair these stereotypes within the story, but examine why they are thinking this way and aim to do better in future reporting. Most of all, journalists should dig below the surface and always look harder for a more unique and nuanced story that may just need a little extra care to uncover. Because across the country, there are thousands of towns just like Athens, Ohio, who one day might be launched into national scrutiny. Regardless of the town and regardless of the story, they deserve a fair and honest portrayal, not stereotypes and hasty reporting. As reporters, we have to do better, and as consumers of news, we have to demand better. Because these communities are more than just a single story. Athens, Ohio is more than just one story and one kid who's really good at football. Athens has a thriving activist scene and also one of the worst sexual assault rates in any Ohio college town. It is home to multiple organic food markets, and yet it continues to struggle with food insecurity. We have a university that gives back to the community while also driving up its crime rate, and in the present moment, our coronavirus cases. There are 1,001 stories housed inside my community, and I would love to tell you about them. I am sure there are 1,001 stories in your town too, and one day I would love to hear about those. Because all of us, We have existed before big news networks came into our communities, and we will exist afterwards. And we deserve better. Thank you so much.